Hi, I'm Keith Cook, along here with my partner David Harmon. We're with RE/MAX Real Estate here in beautiful Bellingham, Washington. And today we're going to go over what is an HOA or Homeowner Association. And just kind of from the bird's eye view up 100 miles, an HOA is basically an association of people that have an ownership and interest in real estate. So they can be condominiums, homes, they can be commercial, residential. But for the most part, there's going to be some common element to the homeowner association for properties within, usually it's within a neighborhood or geographically they're going to be contiguous so that you have a continuity of these types of properties within the homeowner association. They're pretty cool for people who want to have rules and regulations, and for people who aren't necessarily the rule and regulation followers, maybe not the best situation for you if you tend to have, dozen pickup trucks and want to paint your house yellow and have 8 dogs and chickens and all that other stuff. So we have properties for you as well, but this is kind of cool if you like to know what to expect from your neighbors. So I'm going to let Dave dig into it deeper, but so that's it from a big idea, and then kind of break it down on how they get started and the pros and cons.
Right. Yeah. So when a developer creates a development, they will set up CC&Rs, the covenant conditions and restrictions. And once the property's at a certain level with ownership, it's passed on to the homeowners. And these homeowners create a nonprofit organization that's ran by the homeowners, and that's the HOA. So the laws are developed mostly by the developer. They can be amended by the HOA, but the HOA's job is basically to kind of enforce and adhere to the rules that were created for the development. So that would be, these rules can be anything from like paint colors on a house to pets and animals that can be there. If you can park your car in the driveway. I mean, it's a plethora of things that create some uniformity for the people that are involved. So this can be a small, condominium complex, and it can be a giant. I mean, we have some here, Sudden Valley, which is hundreds of homes that abide by HOA and pay the fees and whatever.
And sometimes there might even be like 2 HOAs. So Sudden Valley in particular it's a large master community, and there's all kinds of amenities. It's one of our largest ones here. It's the largest one in Bellingham. There's a marina, there's parks, there's pools, there's actually a golf course that's treated a little bit differently. Lots of common space. And the majority of it's residential homes, but even within this large homeowner association, there's some condominiums. So the condominiums will have specific rules for that, say 10-unit condominium, but that also has to fall in line with the larger master homeowner association of Sudden Valley. So they can be set up quite a few different ways. But the cool part you're saying is like once it's set up, then it's just kind of being neighborly. Necessarily say if we're 10 people who all have a condo, it's like, well, let's just have some rules and have some understanding of what's going to happen. Or are we going to let people rent them out? Or are we going to let people have pets? And some of the pet things is funny. It's kind of discriminatory against big pets. I don't know, because usually they have a scale. It's like you can have a 40-pounder or
Right.
a 30-pounder. But if you're a big dog person, you're probably not going to be a condo person, because that's not going to work.
So the HOA, is set up by the homeowner. So these are kind of somewhat elected positions,
Right.
or volunteered, I guess, because they'll have like a treasurer and different roles, secretary, different people that pay the bills. And so it's up to that HOA organization to actually somewhat enforce, imply, create, budgets. It's if you're somebody that wants to be involved in an HOA and you want some say on what goes on, the chances are you want to be on the board, because that's where the big heavy lifting is done as far as enforcing. And they can amend some of the rules. So it starts out with, certain rules, and as time goes on, maybe they amend those rules to allow certain things or disallow certain things.
Yeah, it makes sense. So if enough people all had 100-pound dogs, then you could make the association have 100-pound dogs. Or if bright yellows in fashion here somewhere down the road, then maybe you can paint everything bright yellow. Nothing against bright yellow, but usually that's going to be called out.
So yeah, and you'll see in the HOA so there's fees involved. So if you're looking for properties, usually we'll see what the HOA fee is. So say it's $200. So what's that $200 cover? It might cover, usually it's going to be some common area landscape maintenance. It could include some utilities, water, sewer, garbage. There may be, some tennis courts or some other things that are involved. And it could come down to the fact that they're actually covering, the exterior, the roof maintenance. And then there's also some that goes into the reserves. So they do a reserve study and get ready down the road. They're preparing for replacing the roof or some other things that need to be done.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. And it makes sense if you like that. It's kind of like what I'll say, if you're buying a residential house, you're going to be responsible 100% for all of you take. So if your roof goes out on your house, you're going to pay for it, or the hot water tank, or the foundation, or the landscape guy. But with the HOA, let's just say that you decide to put in a new playground or replace the park features of the swing sets and things like that. So depending on your ownership or percentage, if there's 100 people in there and you all have a 1% vote, then you would pay 1% of the cost of doing the maintenance. So it's kind of nice because the money is spread across more people. But if you don't really give a rip about a playground, then it's like, why do I want to do this? But the cool part with this is it kind of helps protect your investment, because if you're, say, either you're interested or you're not interested in participating in the association, I think for the most part, the people do a great job on trying to help represent the whole neighborhood. And it's a little easier for the people that don't want to participate. And it does help your value. So if you have a park and all the swing sets broken and stuff, whether you're using it or not, it does help your value down the road, having all of the common areas taken care of. So if it's also either like a condominium, which this isn't all about condominiums, but every condominium for the most part is going to have a homeowner association. I've heard of a couple where they're not, and I'm still trying to actually research on that one today. We're doing a situation on one of those Kentucky condos. So trying to figure out how that has a percentage ownership. And so I don't know, I haven't sold one in there before, but we're figuring that out today. Where usually you're going to have with association all of this stuff. And so it'll all be in writing. So everything Dave's talking about, you'll see with the rules, the regulations, the bylaws, then they can be changed. Usually you'll get so if someone's going to buy a property, or is that in here, like with the resale certificate, which kind of ties into this. So if someone's going to buy let's just say a condo for easy, what all would they get if they're going to look at a condo?
Well, they're going to get the resale certificate, which it's letting them know what's going on with the property. If there's people in arrears on payments, like usually we'll tell you if there's rentals involved on the property. So some of them have a rental cap. So if there's 100 units, maybe 20 of them can be rentals, and not more than that. So they'll let you know whether you're buying a place for investment, whether you can rent it or not. And it's gonna break down everything. It's gonna show how much they have in reserve and what their budget is allocated towards those repairs.
Which is really nice. You'll see all of this in writing. So a lot of it's just see the budget. So if you have, let's just say the same thing, you have a 1% ownership interest in a property. So if you're 100% owner, you're responsible for everything. If it's in an HOA and you have to pay 1% of everything, it's nice to know what's coming down the pike as far as what are they looking at potentially repairing down the road. So if there is an HOA, to me, it makes sense to go back and get kind of copies of the last minutes and meetings and notes and the reserve studies and which they'll if you're look at replacing the clubhouse or the roof or some paving. So they might have some budgetary items coming up and that you might want to know about, because sometimes there might be a special assessment. So if let's just say they have to put in a new park and it's $100,000 with that 1%, each person has to pay $1,000 towards towards that new park. Well, some people may be frustrated and say, I don't want to do that. Well, you're going to have to do it if that's what the majority says. But it's versus regular real estate, there's just kind of more layers of bureaucracy to deal with. So it's not just the city and the county, because sometimes you'll have the HOA. So if you buy a vacant lot in a neighborhood, you might have to get the HOA approval on it for their architectural review committee, or with landscaping, or with fencing, or with paint colors, or with roof type. So it's a little nitpicky, but I think it kind of forces people to be good people or be good neighbors. So you're not the one that has, it's all kind of junky, even though I'm in an HOA and I'd love to have a little bit more space for some of my stuff. And that's just a personal choice I made when I got there. But I am thinking of, I've been thinking about getting a space where it's just, where I just had a larger parcel just for some of my trailers and stuff. But HOAs are, I think they're great for a lot of situations. On condos, the great thing I like about condos, if you have one you don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to worry about mowing the grass or painting it or all this other stuff. And so if say Dave and I have a condo, he's on the board and I'm not, I can let him do all the work and I just sit back and pay my dues, and he's having the meetings and figuring out who to hire for the landscapers, and he loves that type of stuff.
That's funny. Yeah, and Keith, you brought up a great point on the special assessments, because the HOAs are, they're people that are running they're actually little businesses pretty much. They're responsible for collecting money and then anticipating or not anticipating what happens down the road. So like in the regular world, there are businesses that are ran properly and businesses that aren't. And so that's where it's important when you're buying a place that is in an HOA and they do have these funds that they're collecting, to really do the research and find out what they're doing with it. Because that special assessment, if they're collecting money but they're not putting money aside for the roof, if you own your own home, guess what? You get a pick. Well, this year wasn't a good year, I'm going to put my roof on next year. Right. When you're part of an HOA, if they say, hey, we're putting roofs on these next year, and we need $25,000 per homeowner to put this on, guess what? You have to find a way to come up with the money. Right. You don't get a choice in that. So if they don't have money set aside for these projects, they can hit you with these special assessments. And sometimes they can be pretty expensive.
And it makes sense. Like we've had some in Bellingham where it was like $50,000 assessments, but they've had to go through and redo everything, all new siding, windows, decking, everything. And it really takes all of in these, again, condos, every unit to go in there, because you can't have half of them saying, well, yeah, I want to upgrade everything, and the other half saying we don't want to. I mean, you'd have to have a meeting of the minds. But if you're moving forward with a construction project, you kind of need to do it all. Now, once you have your individual unit inside, it's different. So I'm not trying to cross it. These really do go over. HOAs are not always condos, and residents can be in an HOA. It just depends what's there. So in Bellingham, every residential condominium is going to have a homeowner association. There's going to be a president of every homeowner association. Some of our larger ones in Bellingham, so we mentioned Sudden Valley, we have Birch Bay Village, we have Semiahmoo, Homestead. Those are probably some of our largest ones that we have here. There's some small residential ones. I'm up in Woodside. That's a small one of just 100 or so people. And so that the only amenities we have are a couple of parks.
And one thing we're really seeing now is a lot of these storage condos, which are basic condominiums, most of them, especially the newer ones, and they are set up. A lot of them set up to run businesses or not run businesses. So their CC&Rs are actually really important if you are looking to park your boat in there and the guy next to you is fabricating, steel all day long. Right. And you wanted a nice quiet place, and it's like, no, this is an industrial, business place. So we're seeing that a lot when it comes down to storage condos now too, because those HOAs really come into play, because it's no different than any of them. Maybe you can't park your car there overnight. You can't spend the night, can't turn it into your residence.
Which people do. Or yes. It is to me, it's a love-hate, because I love part of it and play by the rules, but sometimes the rules are kind of silly. So it's kind of a rough one, that one. But so anyone who's looking to buy real estate would make sense to look at all this information ahead of time. So you kind of research the club you're going to join and to see if you want to play by that club's rules, or if what's coming down maybe you like the club's rules, but all of a sudden there's going to be a $50,000 assessment coming down the road. And where you would find that is going back into the last few minutes or notes that they keep. So if they're going to have an annual meeting, there's someone there typing notes and saying, here's what was discussed. And so if you see something that brings up a big expenditure down the road, you're going to want to look at that and really research and understand what you're getting into.
Right. And I think that they're great. So really the takeaway on it is, like, if you're somebody that likes, rules, you like the uniformity, like you want to make sure that your neighbor doesn't paint their house a really strange color or park their car in the grass and have chickens running around. Most HOAs are going to have rules and stuff that follow that, so that it's not allowed. If you don't like rules like that, then HOAs probably aren't for you. But then there's also people that live like with Sudden Valley and some of the other Birch Bay Village around here, that if you're somebody that wants to live somewhere where they have golf, tennis, swimming, different aspects of enjoyment for your home, but you can't afford that, to pay $144 a month or whatever to be able to have access to that stuff, that's reasonable. And
Very reasonable.
Certain rules. So
absolutely. So even just saying the Birch Bay Village, which has a full marina, clubhouse, tennis, golf, all of that stuff. So it's really the only marina on Birch Bay. So you couldn't have that if you weren't within that association. And it's pretty cool. You got the dock slip, and Sun Valley has on Lake Whatcom. The one thing, as you're saying, that just reminded me or made me think that I think it's a little more predictable. So if you live in a neighborhood with a homeowner association, it's more likely going to be the same 10 years from now than, say, a traditional neighborhood that's not in a homeowner association, because you just don't know what people are going to potentially do versus the homeowner association. They're going to have rules. And so if it's an existing HOA, you're going to have to imagine that it's going to look similar to the same condition it was 10 years down, earlier or down the road.
Right. And most of them, I mean, they're all different in the way that they actually enforce the rules. And that's kind of somewhat the board of the HOA members, is to make sure that they're enforced. But they also, over time, sometimes they can get a little bit lax. So maybe at some point in time, you couldn't, like he was saying, maybe there was a point in time where you couldn't park an RV in your driveway, and all of a sudden 3 or 4 people started doing it. And now it's like, well, 10 people now have RVs
Busted,
there.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like there. And then over time, a lot of them that start out with HOAs kind of start dissolving over time. So maybe it's a neighborhood that was set up originally with some rules, with covenants and stuff. And it kind of over time, just nobody wanted to be on the board anymore. There was like no enforcement. There wasn't really any common areas that really needed to be taken care of, and they kind of get defunct and dissolved pretty much. So even though they started out with them, if they're not enforced through the time, they just kind of are non-existent.
Absolutely. You're spot on that. I think some of it has to do with the strength of the homeowner association and the will of the homeowner association to kind of mandate or look after the rules that they have set up. So sometimes I know there's an HOA in Birch Bay that really never got started. This was like 50 years ago. So you look at the title report, there's some rules. You're not supposed to have 2 stories. There's so many 2 stories that are built in there. I was part of this association. There was never a meeting. There was never notes. There was never anything. It just hasn't been really cleared off everyone's title, but there was kind of some underlining interest because there's waterfront. There was some common access to get to the waterfront, and nothing was maintained. None of the rules were followed. But if you have a homeowner association that's actually active, then if they see you doing something, then they can have an opportunity to come and tell you to correct it. And the homeowner association is that's where it's good to protect the rules that you want. In this case, the one was defunct. It was like 50 years ago. It just was non-existent. It just didn't go. So that's something where just if you're buying something, reviewing everything. So right. How we find out if there's a homeowner association when we look at a property, we'll know ideally geographically where it's located. But the main part also is just looking at a title report. So once we see that title report that's going to clear title to the property, it's going to have everything referenced. And so if it's going to be subject to a homeowner association, that will be on your documents before you purchase. So if you're working with us or anybody, if you're going to buy a property in a homeowner association, definitely double check everything out just so you can get in there. Not trying to scare you, but just letting you know what is a homeowner association and what to look forward to or not look forward to.
Yeah, there's definitely different levels. So you definitely have, just because it's a homeowner association, I don't think you need to be afraid of it, because some of them are very strict and stuff, and some are a little bit more lenient. So it's like there is a balance in there. So don't be afraid if something has an HOA. Just kind of really need to dig into a little bit more. But yeah, they're not for everybody, but definitely a lot of people absolutely love them.
Yeah, it's kind of like having your parents overview everything. So you do have people that ideally have in their mind the best interest of the whole association, and specifically themselves as well. Because if you're on the board and you're going to make suggestions as far as, I like yellow, maybe we should add yellow to the color palette, and then if someone else votes for it. So if you want to have a voice, you have to show up and actually, look to attend and get on the board. And I think there's the boards I've seen, they're looking for more people. So if you want to be on an association board, then it's, I'd say they're more than willing to have you.
Right, and I agree. The nice part with HOAs, some of them, it does create more of a family type thing, because you guys, have some common interest in your properties and in the neighborhood, because it's brought together that way as an association.
Right.
So lots of them will have picnics, they'll have different stuff, which is kind of nice. You get to know your neighbors and kind of find out what's going on in that aspect, as opposed to some neighborhoods you just kind of it doesn't create a uniformity.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my favorite ones is Latitude 49, just out in Birch Bay. So it's a little more recreation. A lot of them are like, you can only live there 6 months a year. There's a lot of full-time residents in there too, but they've got some great clubhouses, pool and hot tubs, a little mini golf type of thing. But they also have lots of little meetings. So they'll have like bridge night or poker night or croquet day, or so there's a lot of times with these little cliques or associations, you're all part of a group. And that's kind of a cool thing, is that everyone has one thing in common, is that you're part of that homeowner association. So homeowner association can be as little as landscaping all the way to marinas and boats and clubhouses, everything in between. So you do have I think a lot more amenities. If you're going to have an amenity, there's most likely going to be an association, because there has to be some type of situation set up to maintain it, cover it, repair it, cover the cost of it. And that's going to be through the documents of the association and all of that stuff.
Right. Yeah. And some of the HOAs, can be down. I mean, they can be like $20 a month. Mm-hmm. So there's really not, like, as far as fees go.
That's what I pay. Yep.
Yeah. They're not. Whoa. Yeah. Well, I just did one the other day, and it was pretty impressive, because it was a little over $400, but half of that was actually for water, sewer, and garbage, which you'd be paying anyway. So it's like people were asking how much the HOA fees is. Like, it's $400, but I mean, half of that is what you'd be paying on your own anyway. So it was really only $200 that you were paying for the maintenance, which, if you're a homeowner and you were hiring a landscape person or whatever, you'd be more than that. So that actually penciled out good. And guess what? You don't have to do any of the work. So it's like, if you want to go on vacation, you don't have to worry about cutting the grass or cleaning the roof. It's going to be done.
On the condos, absolutely. So if you leave your condo, lock your front door, and you're not real active, you can come back 6 months later and the grounds are going to look the same, because Dave or someone is taking care of everything. So that's definitely a huge advantage, especially with where we're at, because we do get a lot of people who like to, be snowbirds or not necessarily spend the dead of winter in Whatcom County. So they get a chance to go down to Arizona or whatever sand state they like, and then a vacation, come back in the spring, and it's just like they left it.
Well, yeah. So I think the takeaway is HOAs not for everybody, but yeah, don't put them off just because there is an HOA. Do a little investigating and see what's involved. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for sticking with us through this and learning a little bit more about HOAs. Once again, they're not for everybody, but yeah, do some investigating. Yeah, thanks for sticking with us. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we appreciate all the nice positive comments.